Welcome to another edition of Defo on 5. Jeff DeForest along with one Mike Lubie. Lubitz on what figures to be yet another spectacular day here, not only in South Florida, but also on the sporting landscape. Lubie, how are you doing? Yesterday, I have to say, what was one of the most beautiful days. I took my walk of life in the afternoon. Went and saw some live music last night at a place called the Tipperary Pub in Deerfield Beach, which it's amazing because it's kind of a dive bar. And at the same time, here standing about 10 feet in front of you is a world class musician ranked in the top 30 in most of these polls that they have about the world's best guitarist, Matt Schofield. And another guy, jazz master there, blues master on the sax named Terry Hank. And they're playing live music for free. And unfortunately, I think the word has leaked out a little bit. The place was packed. Used to go in there and there were only like a handful of people. But it takes people in South Florida forever to catch on to something good, as is the case, as you see, with our college basketball teams, which both going in the Sweet 16. FAU, there was a lot of steam and a lot of debate, like who's the more popular team, UM or FAU? FAU more of a Cinderella team, and yet FAU has a lower price to reach the Final Four than the University of Miami, if you can dig that. But anyway, how are you on this fine day before we get started here? Because we have another eulogy to perform on the program.
I am doing well. Happy that we're getting through the week and getting closer to some more college basketball action. You're right. The weather yesterday was amazing. I give you credit for taking advantage of it. I did not do that, and I am very jealous. It was beautiful yesterday.
Could not have been any sweeter outside, which is great. And I guess unless you're on South Beach taking in spring break, you're enjoying this period of time immensely.
I don't know what happened.
South Beach has turned into total freaking chaos. It's amazing. All right. It seems like we've been doing a lot of this. We're going to start. My dad used to have this book, and I didn't really understand the significance of it. And I tried reading it a few times, and I still didn't understand the significance of it. But I sort of understood the concept. It was a giant book, like 600 pages, and it was called The Lost Language of Symbolism, Lubie. The Lost Language of Symbolism. And what we find is there are many things in life that are truly symbolic, one of which is the entrance of Willis Reed for the warm-ups in that 1970 Game 7 championship game against the L.A. Lakers, as the New York Knicks, tied at 3 apiece, obviously, were taking on the Lakers in Madison Square Garden, and all the speculation was about Willis Reed, who I believe, was it a quad injury or a thigh injury or something? I don't know, ankle? Not sure exactly anymore what the injury was because it goes back to 1970. But nonetheless, very questionable. Not quite in the Norshad or Mir category, but very, very questionable. And most people thought he wasn't going to be able to play. And he rolls out of the locker room to probably the greatest ovation that was ever heard. And this is saying a lot in Madison Square Garden history. Can you imagine? I mean, all the great championship fights that took place there, all of the tremendous basketball games, both on the pro and the college level, all of the hockey games, Stanley Cup games, all the different things, the Ringling Brothers, the greatest of ovation in Madison Square Garden in history, many people would attribute to Willis Reed coming out there on the court in his warm-ups and just kind of hoisting up a couple of little soft shots, and everybody's thinking, wow, Willis is going to play. We're in there with a shot. And then, of course, legendary, he makes the first 2 shots of the ball game, goes 2 for 4 in the game, sits out the rest of the ball game. Clyde Frazier, Walt Frazier, who was part of that spectacular Knicks team that won in 1970, and then they came back again in 73, which, does this sound familiar, Lubie? The last time the New York Knicks won a championship? 1973. Is there a parallel there with a certain team in South Florida?
Are 100% mirror each other. Like I've said this for years, too.
Wow.
Bastions of the league years ago. They haven't been, they were good into the 90s. They couldn't find a way to win, but they always competed. And then 2000s on, they've had either one owner in the Knicks case, multiple owners in the Dolphins case that just couldn't get the job done. And they become a laughingstock of the league. And both actually now are sort of gaining steam and trying to get back to respectability. Yes, both organizations, to me, I've said this for years, because I have a lot of Knicks fan friends. I'm like, you understand, like, we're the same franchise, just one throws a pigskin and one plays with a round ball.
Interestingly, though, the Knicks are perceived as total failures over this period of time. And everybody, would look at the Knicks and say, my God, no title since 73. And yet the Dolphins kind of get a little bit of a free pass on that. Because people don't like to mention it, right? Because we had Danny Boy, I guess, that kind clouded everybody's vision. I know he never won a title, and a lot of people like to put that label on Dan Marino and say, well, how can he be the greatest quarterback? He never won a championship. And I don't know. Can you make a case for that? That you have to have at least one title to be considered. Ernie Banks never won squat. He was a great ball player. I don't know that diminishes your ability to be qualified as one of the greatest of all time, but it certainly in a team sport is a reflection of the fact that you either have no luck or you got just a freaking bad front office over a long period of time. We're still trying to scramble our way out of it. I don't know this. I would say that neither the Knicks or the Dolphins are really that close to winning a championship again. Is that a fair statement? Knicks, just seem like they're going to be mid-pack, albeit among the top 5 or 6 in the Eastern Conference, but that's a long way from winning the title. And the Dolphins, how far away are they? Are they that one question mark away, the status of Tua Tagovailoa? Not sure that's a fair statement either.
Yeah, maybe I'm biased. I think the Dolphins are closer. Like look, the NBA is not as stacked as it was. The Celtics have come back to the pack a little bit. The Bucks seem like that one team that's just scary. In the West, I mean, the Nuggets were consistent all year, and then the last 3 weeks have been a disaster. The Warriors are totally falling apart. The Clippers are counting on a Kawhi that it doesn't play consistently, and now Paul George has a leg injury again, so you can't on the Clippers. Up and down, the Mavs are in the play-in right now, even after getting Kyrie. The Lakers are a total mess. Like, the league's open, so I guess if you're the Knicks and you can find a way to get a star, you can get there. But to me, the Knicks feel like farther away. Like, I don't.
Are they not a giant piece away? I mean, like one really significant piece away.
Look, Randall's,
as is the case with the Heat.
Randall's turned into I think the Heat have a legit number one and just need.
No, but they need something else though. I mean, Butler is not enough to do it.
They need a superstar. They do, but I think the Knicks need their number one. Like, Randall is doing some stuff where it's hard to ignore him. But
he had 57 the other night and a loss.
And they lost. But he doesn't do everything. You notice Butler will give you 32 and be dying. Like, I think the Knicks are a little far. Like, the Dolphins, to me, it's one if Tua stays healthy, because they now have all the pieces. They have as much talent on the field, and they have the coaches. McDaniel, by all accounts, is considered a savant offensively, and Vic Fangio is considered a savant defensively, which was, I think, got them in trouble last year. Boyer was trying to be Flores, and he wasn't. So, and I think McDaniel had to worry about the defense more than he should have to. He doesn't have to do that now. And but it's Tua staying healthy, and that's a big if. But to me, they feel a little closer. In an NFL where the Chiefs, to me, are the dominant. Look, the Eagles came out of nowhere last year. The Eagles were horrendous 2 years ago. So, I mean, or maybe they made the playoffs, but they weren't good. They weren't a Super Bowl contender. The Dolphins, to me, feel closer, but neither feels like in their sport they're considered a real contender.
I would bet against either team winning the championship this coming year. That would be, if I was putting my money up where my mouth is, I would book all the action against the Knicks and the Dolphins winning the title in their respective leagues. Anyway, getting back to Willis Reed, I mean, always will be symbolic of the kind of courage, the kind of determination from that one move. I mean, he was an excellent player. He was in there battling against some real Redwoods back in the day. This was when low post play was far more important in the NBA. He was surrounded by really good players. Obviously, he had the great backcourt, Clyde Frazier, Earl of Pearl Monroe, a toned down Earl of Pearl Monroe. Dave DeBusschere, one of the great trades in New York history. What was just a solid force, both ends of the court, and a real heady ball player, and a great Bill Bradley, tremendous complementary players. Phil Jackson, I think, was like the 8th man on that New York Knicks team in 1970, and he was a very functional 8th man, that's for sure. Had those sharp elbows that he had, that he would make sure. I mean, he was kind of like sending a goon out there on the court at a time where that sort of play was more than not only tolerated, but was welcomed by the people in the NBA. We were mentioning who you wouldn't want to run into a pick on a baseline with yesterday on one of our shows. And, we were talking to Grant Long, and, of course, Jim Rowinski, the RoboCop, came up, which couldn't be any more of an obscure Heat reference. And yet I'm thinking Rick Mahorn would be the guy that you didn't want to run into. Of all the people, I was buzzing through a bunch of names in that category. Mahorn would be the guy on a blind pick. I mean, it would literally like being in a car crash, just driving into a brick wall. That's for sure. But Reed, the epitome of symbolism when it comes to courage, determination, the kind of guy that was going to do whatever he could to help his team win. And that one episode there, which will forever be indelibly impressed upon the craniums of virtually every sports fan that either was around at the time or has seen the clip since and felt just a giant wave of emotion as Willis Reed came out on the court. Seemed to inspire his Knicks team. Clyde Frazier had a monster game against the Lakers that night, and the New York Knicks had their 1970 NBA championship. So we're going to miss Willis Reed. He always seemed to be a great guy. Checked out at 80. That number's coming up. It's blinking on the board for me, Lubie. So I have to continue that sunshine-based walk of life. World Baseball Classic, we've been saying that we weren't into it. I have to say, I mean, I tuned in for what happened to be maybe one of the most magical moments in baseball history last night. Did you watch any of the World Baseball Classic by any chance?
Ohtani Trout was the last. It was the last at bat.
Last at bat. I mean, and I didn't realize. We were asking who's on the American team, the USA team.
Loaded. It's loaded.
It was an all-star team of gigantic proportions in any era. I mean, in the ninth inning when Ohtani came in to try and nail down a save, which he did, as Japan was leading 3-2 going to the ninth, the USA was unable to muster up much of an attack, and that was with. I mean, think about it. They had Trout in the lineup. They had Paul Goldschmidt in the lineup, the MVP last year in the National League. They had the monsters. Pete Alonso was on that team. He had to face
Kyle Schwarber.
Yeah, Jeff McNeil was leading off the ninth for the USA. I mean, batting champion. Mookie Betts hits into a double play after McNeil drew a very questionable walk. And then, of course, there's Mike Trout with a 3-2 count. And Ohtani throws him a slider that was just a monster at 100+ and wins the game. And you're thinking, my God, that was epic. That was worthy of anything that we've ever seen. I mean, there have been great episodes in all-star games where you had pitchers strike out like a murderer's row of hitters in succession. You've had all kinds of different things happen in baseball history. I would have to say that was on the fringe of being somewhat historic. A lot of guys that I respect in terms of their sports opinion seem to gravitate towards embracing the World Baseball Classic. We only had the ugliness of not knowing exactly what the hell is it, when is it played, what is the format. But without knowing all of that, the two things that stood out were the Edwin Diaz injury and, of course, Jose Altuve going down, and you're thinking, what a waste. Yep. Now, guys can get hurt in spring training anyway. But when I saw what it meant to the players, I mean, the USA team was devastated that they lost this thing. Trout was absolutely despondent, beside himself, that his own teammate with the Angels struck him out to end the game and end the chances of the USA winning the championship. So seemed to have great significance to the players. That's enough for me to buy into it. And I don't think you could have asked for a more climactic, just a stupendous moment than to see Ohtani. You knew he was coming into the game to close it out in the ninth inning if the Japanese team had the lead. And then to mow down those three guys, after the walk to McNeil, he gets the double play and a strikeout. And you thought, wow, that really is some wonderful stuff. If you're looking for drama and action and suspense and all of the different things, tension that go into making a great sporting moment, it had all of that. And for that to be the climactic moment of the tournament, I thought that was pretty cool. I may have to look into this a little bit more deeply the next time it comes around.
It's 2026, so
become a little bit of a fan. Sweet 16 coming up. Of course, FAU goes tomorrow, and FAU facing Tennessee, a Tennessee team that you would have to think has some vulnerability. Yep. I'm looking at the odds 50-1 to win the championship. Florida Atlantic right now, still 50-1, as is the University of Miami, surprisingly. Now, Miami has what would appear to be a little bit more daunting task, although I think they're also ripe to possibly score an upset in this ball game because they played so well in that last game against Indiana that anything representative of that same showing, I think, puts them in there with a chance against Houston, although Houston remains a 7-point favorite. The line has dipped 1/2 a point as some steam has come in on the University of Miami. How about this? Just a quick note on Jim Larrañaga. When he took over George Mason, you talk about tackling challenges. He took over George Mason. They were a Division II school, a commuter school. They had 7 straight losing seasons prior to his arrival there. And this is testament to how great of a coach Jim Larrañaga is. George Mason, 0.0 Blutarski NCAA tournament appearances since.
Oh, wow. Oh, since. Oh,
since he left, yeah. Long gone from that. Overcame a lot, too. I forgot about this. I mean, remember UM was implicated very heavily in that FBI investigation
Oh
about
yeah,
cheating, which is kind of interesting because they were absolved of all guilt. And Larinaga, whose name was mentioned, it was one of those Clockwork Orange things. Your
yeah,
name was mentioned. Yes, yes, yes. And you thought, no, that can't be. Jim Larinaga? He's beyond reproach. I mean, this guy has an impeccable set of credentials. So you can't possibly think that he was involved in some Rick Pitino type of scheme to recruit players. They were absolved of all guilt, but it set them back a couple of years in terms of recruiting.
yes.
And along comes name, image, and license. I didn't realize this. You know that Nigel Pack
Likeness.
has like a likeness, yeah. You know that he has a package with that Ruiz guy for like 800 grand to promote something, like some kind of wallet or something.
No, it's not. It's
His
called
wallet would be the one he's
Ice
promoting.
Wallet or something. That's Ruiz's thing. That's the underhanded Ruiz thing that everyone's waiting to be exposed and blow up.
But talk about, dancing when, the music is playing. I mean, Jim Larinaga figures out a way to overcome. They lost like 2 recruiting classes and a lot of top recruits during that scandal. Nobody wanted to come to the University of Miami.
Yep.
This is when they were still, in kind of a formative stage there. Larinaga had some success, but it's pretty amazing. He was able to overcome that obstacle and transition with like no freshman players coming into the school. And still have the Canes now with the possibility of going to back-to-back Elite Eights and maybe even a little bit further if they can overcome what would appear to be, as we said, somewhat of a daunting task and knocking out yet another number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament when they play the Houston Cougars on Friday night. All right, we're going to see you guys tomorrow. I have a great day planned. I'm going to be out at the Miami Open tennis matches today. I like going to the early rounds because there's action on every court, and you can just kind of roam around and see a lot of the great players. I watched some of the action on TV yesterday, and already off to a rocking start, the Miami Open. So looking forward to that. But we'll talk some about that on tomorrow's edition of Defo on 5. Thanks so much for being with us, and we'll see you tomorrow right here on 5 Reasons Sports Network.